From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast. Welcome to today's episode of the Acres USA podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Megan Neubauer, co-owner of Pure Land Farm in McKinney, Texas, and a leader in agritourism. Megan has transformed her farm into a thriving pick-your-own destination where visitors can harvest a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, and in doing so, she's completely redefined what it means to run a successful small farm. Pure Land Farm, which she runs with her father Jack, has become a model for combining regenerative growing practices with agritourism, creating an experience that is educational as it's enjoyable for the families and guests. Megan recently authored a book through Acres USA, Pick Your Own Farming, Free Yourself from Farmers Markets and Join the Agritourism Revolution, where she shares insights and practical advice on how small farms can adopt this model to improve profitability and quality of life. Today, we'll be diving into her journey, the challenges of the 2024 growing season, and different tactics and techniques of what she would recommend to people trying to follow the path that she has. And even a scenario where if she was plopped out of her situation right now and had to start all over, what would she do? Megan's also one of our speakers at EcoAg 2024. You can find more information on that in the description of the episode. So, without further ado, let's welcome Megan Neubauer. All right, we're joined here with Megan Neubauer. She's one of our newest authors. She wrote the book Pick Your Own Farming, Free Yourself from Farmers Markets and Join the Agritourism Revolution, and it's done well. I think, would we publish it at the end of last year, Megan? So it's almost been a year now that it's been out?
Yeah, that was last December.
Awesome. Well, Megan, thank you for joining us. I know you're busy. Probably all the times you're busy throughout the season, but your farm is located down in Texas. Do you want to kind of give us a little bit of a background on your current farming operation and what you've been
My
up
dad
to?
and I are down here in McKinney, which is in North Texas, and I'm actually not busy all the time, which is the greatest thing about
Oh,
Pick
that's
Your
good.
Own is that we do it for a very concentrated season. So my dad and I operate a diversified fruit and vegetable Pick Your Own. So we grow 12 or 13 different things, and we concentrate our season into about an 8-week open season for people to come and pick. So that works out to about 6 months of kind of full-time growing for the two of us. And then we spend the rest of the year doing, obviously, projects. We have 2 acres of thornless blackberries, so there's a lot of pruning and that kind of thing. But really the intensive growing crop management period is under 6 months for us. So we've been doing that. We just finished our 7th season. We were a market garden before that, doing farmers markets, selling to local restaurants, local distributors, that kind of thing. And we just never really got ahead and never got into a position where we had enough income to pay ourselves. And after a few years of doing that, we were like, something major has to change. Like, we weren't even close. I couldn't even see light at the end of the tunnel for how we were going to be able to do it. It was really important to us to stay small. It's just me and my dad, and we really like it that way. You know, we figured if the two of us spending every minute of our working life growing fruits and vegetables can't do it, then it's not going to work for us. It didn't compute. So after we spent a few years kind of railing against that and throwing spaghetti against the wall on maybe this, maybe that, Pick Your Own kind of fell into our laps. We planted about an acre, less than an acre on that first planting actually, of thornless blackberries in 2018. And we said, let's just see, we'll let people come pick them because we've heard of pick your own berries, right? That's pretty common. Berries, strawberries, peaches, apples, kind of thing. And we'll take everything else to market, and that'll be a good little bump. At least we won't have to deal with the labor for the berries. And the very first people who got there started asking about everything else. Can we pick tomatoes? Can we pick the carrots? What's that? What's that? You know, the demand started right away. So we spent that year just kind of listening and learning. And the next year we leaned in fully to the point of writing the book was that I really wanted to buy this book. right? I couldn't find any
Yeah.
resources on operating a diversified pick your own like this. There aren't even really many resources for a monocrop pick your own. So we jumped in that next year, went pretty good, learned a lot, and just really have kept learning every year and refining what we do and have really become evangelists for the model. Like the profitability is so much greater. We're making 3 and 4 times our best farmers market years in half the time and growing much more food in a short little period, right? So we're really able to feed many, many more people because all we have to worry about is the growing. I don't have to, once I get it to harvest age, I'm done. There's a little work involved in getting people there to come out and making sure they have a good time and being that link to agriculture and to a local farmer that people are really looking for when they come out to do an agritourism activity. But it is so much less labor than the other way. And we're just able to produce a whole lot more food because of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. If we go back a little bit further, what is your background? Was your dad doing this when you were a kid? How did you get to where you are right now? And
No history of farming for either of us. I am a scientist
nice.
by trade, so I got my degree in biology and I worked in biotech for a few years and I worked in bench research down here at UT Southwestern Medical Center and a cancer research lab for a few years and my dad was a petroleum engineer. So I actually grew up overseas. Dad did most of his career in explorations overseas. So now he's a dirt farmer because he's like making up for it, right?
Yeah.
Regenerating.
So what was what was the aha moment or what pushed you guys to start into this
I
venture?
can honestly say now, looking back, if I had known how hard it was to make money, like I feel like if um, farmers talked more, market gardeners, right? I'm talking specifically for little fruit and vegetable local farms like us
Yeah.
talked about how little money they were making, I don't know if I ever would have done it because I just didn't know. I was very naive coming into it. And so was dad, I think. But really, we wanted to invest in some property. Where we are in Collin County, North Texas is one of the fastest growing parts of the country. People are coming from all over America to move to Texas, and they're putting up houses all around us very, very rapidly. So my husband and my dad did a lot of research on where the growth was going to be, and we bought this beautiful 28-acre property kind of right in the zone. And sure enough, that was 2011. Today, it has closed in all around us. So ultimately,
Oh,
yeah, it
perfect.
was really for the investment. But we're just food people. We always have been. Dad's always had a garden wherever he could. My mother is Caribbean, and they have a very strong food culture there. So we've just always been that kind of family who's talking about what are we going to make for dinner, and then what's breakfast going to be. It's just always been a really central thing in our family. Love being outside. We love being active. It's just everything. It just ticked all the boxes for us to try to make a living growing food. Just didn't know how hard it was going to be.
So, yeah, that's kind of the consistent story,
Yeah,
isn't
it
it?
really is. And that's why we become so passionate about sharing it, right? Is like, look, this works. This really worked for us. It's not going to work for everybody, but I think a lot of people are in the position that we were in, and it can work.
What's like the population density of the closest town or what your area is
So
kind of like?
McKinney is, I think, when we moved here. So it was about 114, and now we're well over 200,000. But all the way to Dallas, we're only 30 miles north of Dallas, and it's
Okay.
straight suburbs the whole way. So we are practically an exurb of Dallas at this point. But McKinney itself has a very, very adorable downtown. They've invested a lot. It used to be the county, or it is the county seat, rather. It's a great little destination town. So that's been great to lean into as well. We get a lot of day trippers anyway.
Yeah. What was your first year of production that you guys were taking to the farmers market?
What was it numbers wise or oh, it
What
was
year was it?
2011.
What
No,
year
no,
was
I'm
it?
sorry. It was 2012. It was
Okay, so
20 we bought the property in 2011. I left my job at UT in spring of 2012 And then it's just like standing in front of a fire hose, right? The first year that you're trying to grow. And it was a particularly hot, low rain year that year as well. But we did farmers markets from 2012 through 2016, 2017 is when we had planted those berries. And then really 2018 through, this was our 7th season of Pick Your Own, 2024.
Got it. What is some of the challenges that you guys face in your region as far as your growing conditions, and then what are some of the positives that you
Yeah.
have?
Well, the weather, I know every farmer everywhere complains about the weather, and I'm one of them. It's just getting hotter and hotter, and these storms are getting so severe, and the drought conditions are getting so severe. We used to be able to do a summer cover crop, and now it's like by the time something that's nice about the Pick Your Own, the way that we do it, our crops are done in the middle of July. So our picking season is mid-May through mid-July. Then we tear everything out and we put a summer cover down. And if it doesn't rain, you're not getting a summer cover, right? They're just sitting there. And then we'll do a winter cover after that. But this year we finally set up sprinklers, and we're like, we're not going to lose the season with water in the pond. We're going to water until the pond is gone and then worry about that at that time. So lack of rain has really been a challenge. The nice thing is during the growing season, we're only watering berries over the winter. So, and it happens to rain usually. I should knock on wood. Over the winter and in the spring, this spring we had 12 inches of rain in about 10 days. Right? So,
I was gonna say you had a lot of
yes,
water in the
it's
spring.
just so feast or famine on rain. And the heat is a real issue too, because the ground, we're in clay, we're in black clay. So it's mineral rich, and we've been doing a lot of sap testing this year and stuff. So we're really trying to get more biological in our approach to dealing with our soil and our water. It's very alkaline, so we have those kind of unique challenges there. But man, the heat and the drought, and then the severity of the storms, especially in the spring, we get some hail that we're getting baseballs and softballs sometimes, and it just feels like one day you're going to pull that straw, and or tornado,
Yeah.
or who knows what. We do have I think we were like the second farm in Texas to get whole farm revenue insurance, which has been at least a relief as far as like a hail event. I feel like we'll at least have insurance for that, but it's very nerve-wracking every year.
Yeah. What's your summer cover crop rotation like?
So dad is the cover crop man, but usually we're doing mixes, right? So we've got a 7 to 9 seed blend in there right now that is like sun hemp, there's buckwheat, there's rye, there's peas, all kinds of stuff. And it's some kind of,
And
go
is
ahead.
is there anything specific that what was your cash crop that you had prior to that, and what you're trying to follow the cash crop
Well,
with?
what's interesting is that we plant all of our space at once, right? So it's you have to think of it. We do rotate in terms of what is. I won't plant my tomatoes where I had my tomatoes last year, but it's like
Right.
the next cash crop isn't coming until March. So I can swing
Yep.
a couple covers through there if we have rain, sort of, we have conditions that permit that. But that just doesn't always happen that way. We don't get lucky that often.
So are you able to spread out when revenue's coming in, or are you pretty much in that 8-week
It's
period?
100%, and well, 100% of the produce is in that 8-week period. The thing that's really nice that we started doing about 3 years ago was a season pass. So kind of a membership thing for the farm,
Hmm.
because we do sell tickets to come to the farm. It's $5 if you want to just come one time. It's just basically an admission, and we sell those in advance on the website so that we are targeting the right number of people for the right amount of stuff that we have. Because the worst case scenario is that somebody gets there and there's nothing to pick, and they've paid money to come get in and there's nothing left. It's picked clean, right? So Dad and I have always been really passionate about preserving the experience. And what makes a good experience for someone coming out is for it to be relatively abundant as we can get it, for them to have the same availability. The first person who walks into the farm for the day and the last person has the same basic availability, but for the profitability, you need to be picked out by the end of the day, right? So that's kind of the balance that we're always trying to work. What ended up happening is when we started to get more popular a couple years in, and especially after COVID, to be outside, it was one of the only things to do, and grocery stores were empty anyway. So we became really popular during COVID. And a bunch of our regulars weren't able to get tickets. Like, our tickets were selling out too fast. So I created a
Mm.
season pass, and I cherry picked that first year. My people who I know always come every week, really value the food, buy a lot. And I built on that every year. So now what we're going to do, last year I sold 600, a little over 600. This year I'm going to try to double. I've doubled it kind of every year. This year I'm going to double it again, and I sell them all on March 1st. So it's almost like a CSA, like, infusion at the beginning of the season. So if I sell all my tickets on March 1st, there's more than the money that we need to actually do the growing itself.
So what was your background in marketing? Who made the website? What key features does the website have? What have you found that's, really important to have on that to make this? 'Cause I'm sure you're leveraging the software and the technology to make your life a lot easier with the
Yeah,
organization.
that's all me. So, and I'm self-taught, and none of it is groundbreaking, right? It's a Squarespace website. It's
Yeah.
dead simple. And 99.9% of our marketing efforts are social media, because we have enough of a following for that to work, right? And at the beginning, I did a little paid ad here or there. Um, Always say yes to decent sized press, right? We always try to get, like, the mayor's wife comes out every year and she'll do a post, and she's got a lot of followers. So it's really just organic like that. But you see, when people come out to the farm with their children and their children start picking, the phone comes right out, right? And
Hmm.
that mom is posting those pictures and tagging us on her Instagram before they even leave. So that kind of just organic person to person marketing has been all that we've needed. Dad and I can't feed a billion people, right? We don't need, there's two of
Yeah.
us. We're cranking out like 35, 40,000 pounds of food over that 8-week period. And that takes 5 to 10,000 visitors to do.
Have you invested in infrastructure at your farm to host people, or is it simple where you kind of put up a tent and then you're walking around in the field, or how are you transacting things on site?
It's really simple. And that's another thing that I love about this model, is that the barrier to entry is so low. We don't have a wash and pack. Like, we don't have a building at all. We don't have walk-in coolers. We don't have any of that. We rent porta potties, and we have tents. And that has been something that we changed this year because of that increasingly severe weather. Our tents kept getting torn apart during the season. So we did build out, and my dad can build anything. He's an engineer. So he built out, we have a very, very old barn from the 20s on the property, and we built out a permanent hard tin roof structure so that we don't have to mess with tents anymore. But no, that's it. I don't have to worry about storing anything. I don't have to worry about any of that. And we found that, like, it would be nice. And like I say in the book, if you have like a farm stand kind of building, and you've got a wraparound porch, and like, I'm super jealous of all that. That's really nice, but you
Yep.
don't need it. We have reached the point where, like, I'd just rather put the money in my pocket, because people don't care. People who come out are not looking to
Yeah.
be inside. They're perfectly happy they came here to be out in the field doing what they came to do. And it's charming. We try to lean into that.
What was the planning process, and how much effort do you put into their experience while they're on the
A
farm?
lot, a lot. I really try to be accessible to people coming out. Like, I staff the pick. So the only staff that we have are during the season for picks. So we call them picks, the times that we're open to have people come out. Dad and I do 100% of the growing ourselves. But during a pick, I have a greeter who is always just welcoming people, checking their tickets, and explaining what to do. I have at least 2 cashiers, usually 3, and then I'm usually one of those. If I can get away, I do get away and just chat with people. And Dad is just a permanent chatter. Like, I want him to just be out talking to people because that's what they came for. They want to.
Yeah.
We did a survey a couple of years back that found that like the number one motivating factor for people who came out to see us was to form a personal relationship with a farmer and support local agriculture. And we're happy to do that. That's free. That's easy to do. That pushes the whole cause forward, right? So what Dad and I say, we like put on our farmer costumes and our farmer hats and go out and really reconnect people with people who grow their food, and an actual face to a farmer and a first name that so many people don't have anymore, and they're really looking to have in their lives.
Is that something that you two had naturally, where you just liked hosting people and greeting people and giving them that experience?
Definitely. And it is one of the like 5 things that I identify in the book as kind of must-haves for a successful pick your own. One of
Yeah.
them is just a hospitable nature that enjoys being around people. Because I don't know how much you can fake it. And they really do want to talk to the farmer. Like having a happy, it's very important, honestly, to have a happy, easygoing, fun, friendly staff. But they want to talk to the farmer. Like you can't escape that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the challenges that farmers will have, because I think agritourism is the solution to, making up the difference on a lot of different operations. But then you have the personality of a farmer who's like, I don't really want to talk to people. But one way that I'm sure with through the website and the technology, it sounds like it's very organized. You have schedules, so because the one thing we've always done that as well, where we've invited people out here. If whenever they buy meat, they can come out and visit. But the ones that it gets a little bit annoying is when people start dropping in
Oh, yeah.
um, unannounced, and I think that's always what people get worried about, and they might have a couple experiences like that, and they get driven away from this type of model. Um, so, what do you do to set your boundaries, and
Yeah.
then also how important is that schedule and just communication with your customers to notify them this is the
I
time
have a
that you
lot
come?
to say about that. Eh, and
Yeah,
I completely understand it, and that has also been our experience. When you're a farm that opens your door to the public thinks you're always open. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten calls, but when we used to have a landline, we disconnected phone service to the farm for partially that reason,
mm,
because anybody who leaves a voicemail thinks this person's gonna call me back. So I ended up getting like
yeah,
10, 20 voicemails asking for the hours, asking for directions. I'm like, this is just not it's not, when I'm this busy, it's not an appropriate use of my time to return 20 phone calls that
yep,
give the information that's on the website, right? But you have to provide that information, even if you have to push people a little bit harder to do a little looking on their own, right? So we have a ton of information on the website. I have a really robust FAQ that goes through in detail how we work. And I link to that everywhere. I link to it on social media several times over the season just to say, if you're new here, this is how we work. These are typically the days we're open. These are the hours. When when it is not these hours, we are closed completely. And we didn't have a gate. The property didn't have an address when we bought it, but
yeah,
we had to build a gate, build a lock, put a no trespassing sign, because Dad and I and if you leave that gate open during the season, if you run out to grab lunch, you need to stop and close the gate behind you because people will come in. Dad and I were harvesting the rest of the garlic one time, 5 p.m. We are sweaty, disgusting, exhausted, and a family was just wandering around taking stuff. Just like, hello, hello, from across the field, like, please. But yeah, so it really takes I would say a physical barrier is your number one. You've got to have a gate that locks, a sign on it that says, here's the click this. Thanks for coming. Sorry, we're closed. Scan this QR code and go to the website. All the information is there. But yeah, I really had to
Yeah.
and I have had to discontinue phone service because I understand people think you're going to call back. I'm not going to call back. But auto replies, right? My email has an auto reply. My all of my social medias have an auto reply that say, "Hey, is your question answered here first?" Right? And then if I will still go through those and see if there's something that I actually need to answer, but that takes care of 90% of them.
Did you, was this mainly trial based where just whenever a new issue popped up, you kind of solved it with some of these methods, or do you have like a big SOP document that lists, like where everything is, what, all the questions that people ask? You have a big FAQ section, but what was the process in developing all
Totally
that?
iterative. And even
Yeah.
even last year, I added a new FAQ question. New things always come up, and it's funny how they come up, and it'll be like 3 people ask the same thing, and I'm like, "Okay, gotta throw it on the FAQ." Some
Yeah.
things just happen in the ether and coalesce.
Yeah. It's definitely it's a big thing that stops a lot of people with doing businesses like this is the personal interaction and people, not knowing the boundaries. But I think you can solve a lot of that, just on the voicemail situation too, setting that automated voicemail and saying we don't use this. These are the hours. This is the website. Please
Yeah,
visit
and there
that.
have been some
But
interesting things. I had one incident this year where a guy came in when we were closed and he was like, "No, you're open. Your hours online say you're open." And I said, "I promise you, they do not." Because that I set all of those. Me personally, you're talking to the only person who has control over the what those hours say. And I promise it doesn't. And he was like, "No, look." And he showed me that on the Apple map users can submit hours for businesses. And I had never claimed my Apple
mm,
map listing. I have my Google map listing, but I had no idea.
yeah,
And some user had submitted that I was open from 9 to 12 every day. I am not. So I had to go through that whole process of claiming it and dealing with getting those hours removed. Right. So there's always something new that can break as well.
well, this would be an amazing resource to create
Yeah.
all of those little things, like kind of like a step by step. Make sure you check Google Maps. Make sure you check Apple
Hmm.
Maps. Um, but part of it too is people. The hardest initial step is you have to just start doing it, and there's going to become pain points
Hmm.
that rise up, and you just have to solve them as they come.
Another thing that started happening this summer that was very funny was there is another nearby blackberry pick your own that opened, and that's great. We know them, we've become friendly with them. uh, and I had more than one person arrive to my farm with tickets to that farm. Right, so I was like, they're like,
Oh,
no, no,
really?
I bought tickets for here. I was like, just let me see them, please. Okay, you are not at Sunset Trail. You're at Pure Land. Go back out this road.
Have you have you guys ever partnered with other operations, like tried to bring in other things to capture while people are there? Other farmers or anything else like selling, baskets or selling different
Yeah, I have a
products?
baker that comes and she's wonderful. They've been very supportive of us for a long time. And she comes, it's basically her market on Saturdays. So she brings pastries and breads and stuff. And she sells out. She does great. As far as other stuff, I would love like an egg vendor. I know people are always asking us for eggs and milk. Um, we won't take on a farm stand. It's just we don't have the facility for it. I
Yeah.
don't think the margin's worth it, and the hassle is not worth it because Dad and I are spending every waking minute that we have on the plants, right? Because we really push it to try to grow as much as we possibly can. So there's a couple that I've thought about, but really the baking works well.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're someone else growing something, different than a farm like Megan's, you could reach out to them. Have you had farmers reach out to you asking to partner
Yeah,
in
I
some
really
way
would.
besides the
I
bakery?
really would take like somebody who had watermelons or something that I don't grow. I think would be great. I
Yeah,
had a guy reach out to me with sweet corn once, and I was like, great. And then I never heard from him again. We're farmers, we're dealing with perishable products. We're hustling multiple angles all the time, right? To try to get our stuff moved. And once it's moved, we're done. Like you'll never hear from me again. That those watermelons are sold.
yeah,
I've moved on. So no, I would love to do that though. Or a meat vendor. I've thought about that too. I worry about making it worth their time just because I don't know. I don't have data on what I know now for the baker, how much she sells, and she knows now because we've been doing it for years and we've grown kind of together. She's been with me for so long. But for a meat vendor or something, I would just need them to understand I don't have a purchase history on this customer base for they're coming here to pick berries and carrots. I don't
yeah.
know how much meat they're gonna buy.
Hi there. Just wanted to interrupt this episode to make sure that you have heard about our Acres 2024 Eco Egg Conference. This year's event will be held in Madison, Wisconsin from December 2nd through December 5th. I think we have put together one of the best lineups for a conference in the regenerative and organic agriculture space. Gabe Brown, Alan Williams, and their team from Understanding Ag, along with Joel Salatin, John Kemp, Gary Zimmer, Mark Shepard, Dr. Nasha Winters, Megan Neubauer, Matt Powers, Nigel Palmer, Will Harris, Jeff Poppin, Aaron Silva, Austin Unruh, Andre Liu, Jay Fuhrer, Steve Diver, and many more. So if you're interested, feel free to give us a call at 970-392-4464 or email us at support@acresusa.com. You can also register online at acresusa.com/eco-ag. How important is the data that you have on your customers as far as, because you said you were going to double your
Yeah.
size, so, making plans to scale, you know,
I'm gonna double my season
especially with your,
passes.
especially, oh, yeah, well, that means the same thing. So, like, that those season passes, all those customers probably have an average amount that they
Yes.
spend with you during the growing season. How important is that data? Have you guys spent a lot of time making sure that you understand those
It's
metrics?
everything. Yeah, it really is everything for us. What has been really nice about Pick Your Own in the data realm is that every single pound of produce, every tenth of a pound, hits the scale, only goes one place, right? There's only one way for it to leave. It comes through the tent, hits the scale, and then leaves. So, just in the transaction software, we just use QuickBooks mobile card readers. Everything is logged in that transaction software, and I have production reports to the 100th pound, right, every single day. And I can see really data, and I keep a very, very close tab on why is zucchini production down, because that's one thing about Pick Your Own. I'm not picking it, so I don't have that familiarity with exactly what's coming out, right? I like to work checkout so I can see and get at least get a qualitative sense of like there aren't many cherry tomatoes coming out today. There's not, and sort of dial into what's happening there. But the data has really been interesting on maximizing the profitability because we know if my average booking, the average party size that comes out to the farm is 2.5 people, and we have limited the number of people that can make a single booking as 6, because 3 parties of 2 are going to spend more than 1 party of 6, like absolutely guaranteed. It's the same thing that happens in restaurants, right? So we've been able to prioritize things a little bit that way. I sell 2 sizes of season passes for that reason, and I sell more of my 2-person season passes than I will of my family season passes. And say my average transaction is $45 at the actual cash register on produce. That lets me see how many people can I take today, how much general stuff do I have out there, and we have a max on how many people will take any day at all, just because that's the parking lot size. We don't want it to be crazy, and we try to stay at that max, right? As long as production is good, we'll stay at that max all summer. But that's what we really use to figure that out. And then I have an expectation of what Dad and I know what we're going to end up making by a couple weeks in to the summer. Just like we could tell how things are going. And we can tell by how many season passes we've sold, how the day tickets are going, where we're going to end up very early in the season, because we have all of that data.
If you were pulled out of the situation right now, dropped in a different area in the country, and had to do this all over again, what would be the things that you would do differently, um, to get started and to build that customer base? Because I think the customer base piece, you have a lot of issues solved with that. The fact that people are willing to just come all the time. But how would you do it if you didn't have that customer base? You're put down in a different area, say you had the same production availability that you have now. But what are some of the marketing things or ideas that you would do, maybe differently than how you started to get you to where you are
That's really
quicker?
interesting. And I have, because of the book, heard from a few people, and now I go and follow their farms where they're like, I'm going to try this. And I've tuned into one farm I'm thinking of specifically, that's a blueberry farm, and they're not even open. Like, they have blueberries planted and that's it. And her marketing is so good. She's just inviting people to the farm to like help them plant the blueberry plants, just doing educational stuff, activities. And like, she's building this huge following with no food, with nothing ready. Just getting out
Yeah.
there, just putting something out there. And that is not natural for a lot of us, farmers, especially. Dad would not be a TikTok star on his own. It's just not, it's not natural for him. But I would you start all your social medias immediately and just start talking about it. Just start posting and get a brand voice together and have it be authentic, right? It's got to sound like you. We have a really clear brand voice because it's mine, right? So people recognize when something is posted from the farm. They don't have to see that it was from the farm. They can tell that it's me that said it. And
Yeah.
that recognition and making that personal connection is really important. So, I mean, what I would do is just start doing it. I'm now more confident in my farming abilities than I was 7 years ago. So, having done it the difference that I'm getting to here is if I was new to farming and started a new place, or if I was had my current farming experience and started a new place. I'm pretty confident in my production numbers and what I can get out of a farm, right? But if I were new to it, my best advice is to like build as much of a following as you can, but be really conservative in the numbers of people you invite in, or the number of tickets you sell, so that you can preserve that experience. Because as long as the experience is good, you will have a line of people at your door. As long as the produce is high quality and the experience is good, there are always going to be enough people who want to come.
What are some of the, I know you've mentioned a few times that you guys are pushing it, hard. What is some of the tactical management uh, practices that you guys are doing to make sure that you get, because you have to have the amount of produce that you are selling. So what are some of the things that you're doing, some mistakes that maybe you made along the way? What's the most important thing to get your yield?
It's humbling too, because you'll find new mistakes. Every year in farming is different. That is the nature of what we do,
Yeah.
right? In agriculture, is that the conditions are never exactly the same from year to year. So what we do is, the diversity is one of the keys, right? Because I am not just selling strawberries. If you show up and I have no strawberries and all I sell are strawberries, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
If you show up and I have carrots, cucumbers, beets, maybe I'm out of tomatoes and I'm out of squash, but I have 6 other things, that's not so bad. I can invite you back if you're unhappy, and we do that, right? Come back on us. I'm sorry we were out of that, but this is agriculture, and this is and I really do try to communicate with people a lot and set expectations. Setting expectations is thing number one. We've got a lot of this. We don't have a lot of that. If you want this,
Yeah.
book the 9 o'clock hour. Come earliest. We will not have it by the end of the day. That kind of thing, right? But over the years, we have been able to dial in on the relative amounts of each crop. And I put a pie chart in the book because I knew people were going to ask. So I have like a pie chart of what percentage of our crops are tomatoes, squash, zucchinis, cucumbers, beets, all of that. So it's a relative, just like this is the relative proportion of everything that we grow. And with those pretty close to those proportions, they change a little every year. That gives the variety for this number of people. You know what I mean? Because they're going to pick, you will get people who come in and pick 14 pounds of beets and they're super happy. You'll get people who come in and pick 40 pounds of tomatoes every day. And then you'll get people who come in and pick 3 cherry tomatoes, 1 carrot, and like 1 little cucumber, and they're done. They just came for the fun. But it averages out to this sort of crop mix that we have found in our area for our market, which is this many zucchini plants to this many cherry tomato plants to this many cucumber plants and so on. So, I mean, there's no replacement for experience, but I put that in as just kind of a jumping off point.
What do you do to make sure that your soil is performing each year? Are you guys composting? You bring in amendments in?
So this last year, 2024, was a bit of a transition year for us. And Dad and I we became part of the Acres family, really started getting into John Kemp and trying to take like Gary Zimmer, a much more biological approach. And we've always done everything organically, but after having a very bountiful 2023, we were like, okay, there's something to this. We can do even better. I know it. So we really took a transition year this year where we backed off on a lot of inputs and took SAP. So we did SAP samples from a variety of crops and really found some interesting deficiencies, and we really have a good plan for next year. So the main thing is focusing on biology, because we are in clay. We have a lot of minerals, but a lot of it is unavailable. And the pH being high just locks up a bunch of stuff. So it's sitting there, but it can't make it into the plant. So we have really been focusing on that. We're working with a great guy over at Tineo that has helped us interpret our SAPs. Because if you've never read a SAP analysis before, and Dad and I are like, we're smart and this is pretty complicated. But once you do a few and you have somebody holding your hand through it has been really eceye-opening. So we do compost. We do amend with really like gentle organic kind of 624 sulfomag kinds of stuff. We do sulfur for the pH. I mean, you're never going to change the pH of a field, right? But the biology has been really helpful working at the root zone for that as well. We do a lot of foliar feeding. So I do kind of the base AEA program this year. We're going to take that and build upon it now that we have a year's worth of SAP analysis from those. So yeah, it's a very biologically focused. I do a lot of not a lot, but I do some Korean natural farming. I do JMS, obviously the cover crops, but we try to be really as holistic and regenerative as we can.
Yeah. What is how do you manage weeds? What's your weed control?
I have 2 hands. We do plastic mulch. We do as little plastic as we can, which is down to only a couple of rows. We do Bio 360 on the rest, so it's biodegradable. And what's great about the one thing that's great about living on the surface of the sun here in North Texas is that it really does degrade by the end of the season. Like it's gone. You can't find a scrap of it now. So the biodegradable mulch has been great. It's indispensable for a 2-person operation with about 12,000 row feet. That's what Dad and I are doing, about 2 acres of annuals and about 2 acres of thornless berries, blackberries. We do it's landscape fabric between the rows so that when people come out, it's just, I can't be mowing in between rows. And our rows are 6 foot on center, so they're further apart than like an intensive Fortier kind of market garden setup. This is pretty spacious because you need to be able to get a stroller through or a wheelchair or be able to wrangle 6 little kids in the row. But if it's grassy, it's a problem. So we started, I think 3 years ago, we laid landscape fabric in between them, and that works great. It also helps with the mud. So yeah, but otherwise, I mean, we hand weed. We don't cultivate anything manual. I mean, with machinery.
It's interesting. What was like the biggest growing mistake that you made?
Ugh, what year? Oh gosh.
Let's say the biggest crop failure. What
Strawberries.
happened
That's
and what?
easy.
Yeah.
Strawberries. Organic strawberries are hard, I think, under like good conditions. Man, if you are listening and you are in a good place near any kind of decent sized town and you grow good strawberries, especially if they're organic, just stop what you're doing and plant everything in strawberries because people are so, so desperate to pick strawberries. We tried 3 times, but one doesn't count because they died right away. But the first time we tried them, it just they got, they're fussy. And we have a lot of fungal disease in our soil. Anyway, we've got anthracnose, we've got obviously like the kind of botrytis strawberry diseases that happen. So the first year, like, okay. Second time, not really any better. Then they died. The third time we did them, and we were actually doing okay. And it looked like we were going to get a decent crop, and there were lots of berries set. And I was looking at them over from we had a bird net over them because the birds had gotten them last time. So we're like, okay, surely we have experienced everything that could go wrong with these. And I was looking at them. I was looking from the east towards the west. And like, they look pretty good. And then I went around to the west side and I was looking towards the east, fixing the bird net. And every west facing berry was sunburned and had turned to mush. I was like, well, I don't think I can beat that. So
Yeah.
we gave up. Also, they really didn't make enough money. At least the way that we were growing them, we have a required like dollar amount per foot that everything makes, and strawberries were not even close. Like we weren't even close to doing them well enough to stay.
So you have 4 acres of production. What are you doing with the rest of the 24? Just plenty of room to
It's
scale.
plenty of no. We are growing as much as we choose to grow. If we grew any more, we would have to
Yeah.
hire help, and we don't need to. We're making money. It works where it's at, but a couple acres of that is parking, right, and is where the barn is, and then we have kind of the people side, and then we have the equipment side where we keep all the implements and park the tractor and all of that. And then we just have a lot of native pasture. So Dad has kind of made a project out of never mowing, a good couple acres in the middle, and there's bushy blue stem and all kinds of wonderful buttons and whatnot down in there. And it's a really beautiful view. It's long and skinny, and it's on a hillside. So the first thing we did was cut in some terraces. So the annuals are on 3 terraces that are each about 3/4 of an acre, and the berries are down in the bottom where it stays a little wetter.
To add to the agritourism, have you guys ever thought about putting up a building, Airbnb, or camping, or actually bringing people on to the
We've been
farm?
approached by some of the glamping people. We've never really pursued it. I think there is some interest, but really we just kind of focus. We really just focus.
Yeah,
As far as investing in buildings and stuff, this just goes back to like at this point, we'd rather keep the money than put a building up and just really keep the business just really, really focused.
that's a good lesson in itself. Stay focused, stay in your lane.
Yeah, that's really where we are. And I have friends out here who have great, beautiful Airbnb and sort of have catering kitchens and stuff, and they do events and stuff for, $500,000, $750,000 investments. And they're like, I'm good. I'm gonna keep my little monies in my
Yeah.
pocket and we'll just do our little growing thing. And then eventually we'll move on.
So you are presenting at EcoAg this year. Do you want to talk about a little bit what you plan on presenting on and the topic and what people can
Yeah,
expect out
I'm
of it?
really excited. So, what I plan to present this year is growing strategies for increasing yield, variety, and profit in a pick your own situation, right? So, really, it's the crop planning aspect because there are a lot of things that we have to consider in a pick your own crop planning that we didn't for year round market farming like crop planning. A lot of it is different. Spacing is different. Your timing is different. Just there's a lot to think about, and especially the way that we tie it back to our data. Um, I really like to share that with people because I think that it can really help you maximize your profitability and see where you're going. Like I said, Dad and I know what we're going to make very early in the season because we can see the trend and we know performance from the past. And being able to forecast like that, I think, is something I could never do with the farmer's market because you don't know who's going to show up at the farmer's market, right? It could rain and nobody shows up. If it rains on me, I just will open a pick the next day and put tickets back on sale and people will buy them, right? So,
Yeah.
but it's a very different mindset to plant all of your space at once and have the maximum variety harvestable within a really little bitty window than it is to try to produce for year round and rotate stuff in spaces. So I'm going to kind of walk through the process Dad and I have developed for doing that.
And then what do you see? What are your long-term goals with your farm?
That's a great question.
How do you see it evolving?
What I really see is eventually, my dad's in his 70s now. I think we have a few more years of farming together and doing this. I don't know that I'll continue to do it without him, but I think that our long-term purpose is going to be sharing this with other farmers because I think there's a lot of farmers that are in the position we are that have all of the pieces in place and just need the guidance to transition to this model. So that's really the direction that I'm going to end up going, is sharing this thing as far and wide as I possibly can. But we definitely have a few years left in us for farming.
And we've talked about making an online course to give people a step-by-step
Yes,
process on it.
I have started to work on an online course, and it is what we do is very visual. A lot of people want to
Yeah.
see I don't know. That's a lot of people. I don't know if I could deal with that. What is it? What do people really do when they get there? And farming is obviously a very visual thing anyway. And a lot of these farmers have put up these courses that I think are great. So there's no replacement for being able to see what someone is doing. So I've started to work on the course. I want it to be more expansive than the book. So it will talk about, although the book is not about growing techniques, right? We buy the books about growing techniques. Like, I can recommend lots of books, but we are always still learning. But we have figured out some things that work for us as far as growing techniques. So we'll share all of that kind of stuff as well in the course. But it's going to be a labor of love. It's going to take a while because I only have 8 weeks. Well, and then the run up to my season, I don't have all that much time to shoot it, right? If I don't get it shot during the beginning of my season next year, I'll miss it. So I'm really trying to get everything in order to do that.
Well, now we've spoken into existence.
Yes, we have. Now I have to do it.
Yeah. How do you see agritourism evolving? What role do you think small farms like this have in the future of agriculture? I think there's room for it to grow across the
Oh
country.
boy.
How
I
do you
think the
see it?
potential is so huge. I really do. Because I'm boots on the ground seeing it every day, right? These people, the public wants to come out to my farm to pay me money to experience the activity of agriculture with us and sharing a fun, immersive sensory experience with people and their families. It just touches people in a way that going to the farmer's market never did for me. I never received one
Yeah.
review about my farm when we used to go to the farmer's market. Now I have hundreds, right? The difference in the experience and the way that it connects to people in this deeply human way to feed yourself from plants, right? And to be around people that grow plants and to share in just the absolute magic of growing food is really impactful. And we spend all day talking to people about what we do and they listen. So I think the more people that we can reach like that, and the more farms that start doing agritourism and opening their gates, talking to people who are willfully have opted in to listen to them, right? And the way that we could reach people through that, which they will take and they will store in their brains and go back to their lives, and then they'll hear about the farm bill, or they'll hear about, something in politics or some piece of legislation or whatever, and they'll be like, oh, I wonder what my farmer thinks of that? Or would that affect the farm that we go to every summer? I have families who come every single year and have been. And they start to think about, and they ask us every day, well, where should I get meat? Do you know someone who farms like you that I can get milk from? We connect people to those farmers all the time. Every person that we can reach that thinks a little bit harder about where they're getting their food and makes a decision to get it locally or regeneratively grown is a win, right? I don't think that we're going to make an impact as like these tiny little farms like mine who are growing perfectly regeneratively, if that's a thing. We need to get everybody doing a little bit, right? We need to get everybody, millions and millions of people buying from little farms part of the time. I just think that the more people that we can reach and create these memories for, and these positive associations of agriculture, and any association with agriculture, because people are so far removed from it. It just brings that awareness to the front for them, and they just start to think a little. We just need to get people thinking a little, and then they'll take that to their votes, right? And they'll start calling this is like what FARFA does, and the sign behind me, right, encourages everybody. This is what's going on with your legislators, and this is what we need you to throw your support behind. We can build this army of people who have become educated about agriculture because of the agritourism they participate in, and get the consumer base to demand better food and practices that support farmers and transition to regen and all of that.
Yeah. What's the final piece of advice you'd give to farmers listening to this right now that might be struggling with the conventional markets that could be considering making a switch to your model?
Boy, I would say if you're not ready to go all in, dip a toe in this. Like, invite a few people to come out and farm, and come out and pick in your next season, and just see what you think. Get some feedback. You do need to be like relatively near a town, but that's by scale, right? You don't need to be near a very big town if you're not trying to, if you're a relatively small farm. But I would say dip your toe in. You don't have to go all the way in. But what Dad and I did in dipping our toe in with the blackberries was we immediately saw the potential, right? So try it out. You will likely see the same like proof of the theory of the case, and then build on it from there.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to see you in December. We hope people listening to this are planning on coming and visiting with you. What are areas that people can head to right now to learn more about you and what you're working on?
Obviously, you can go to Acres U.S.A. to grab the book. You can go to purelandorganic.com. That's our website. We're on all the socials at Pure Land Farm. So yeah, come follow us.
Awesome. All right, Megan, this is a great episode. We're looking forward to seeing you in December.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production-scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Weston Larson of Acres USA. We're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experience.